Well, Mike, we've got another special episode of the podcast, and this is really exciting. We've got author, podcaster, engineer, and producer, friend of the podcast, Mr. Bobby Owsinski.
Oh, yes. And we do check in with Bobby from time to time, and he is really kind of a great resource for us on what's going on in the studio and how records are made and all of the technology that's surrounding that. So on this particular special episode, we discuss a wide range of topics, including his musicians, AI handbook, and the typical roles of and responsibilities of engineers, mixers, and producers, and different gear. And we just had a great little chat.
Yeah, we always do. And he also joins us for our AI roundtables. Anyway, without further ado, here's Bobby Owsinski. Let it roll.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, let's jump right in. You've done a lot of books. You've done a lot of things that we've talked about, but one of my favorites we've had you on to talk about that's the Musician's AI Handbook. But I was just looking at that the other day. That's over 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. Talk a little bit about that book and how have some of those tools and tactics that you talk about in the book, all of these things for musicians, how have they sort of changed and evolved in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it needs to be updated, that's for sure. Although a lot of it is surprisingly relevant still and works. The biggest change has been in the AI music generation tools. And they've gotten a lot better and things are a lot different in that realm. And I think the same thing that there's also sections on marketing, which includes videos and graphics. That's gotten better as well, as the video generation especially. But the other things are surprisingly the same, or not very much different. So when it comes to music production tools, plugins and things like that, noise reduction plugins, incrementally better, but not a huge difference.
Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of actually the people involved in the recording process. And talk about the evolution of the producer's role. Kind of what has changed since maybe the 70s versus now in terms of, or has it changed, of what a producer does in a given recording session?
I'm not making a value judgment at all here. It's changed, and I would say everything has evolved. It's not better, it's not worse, it just is different. So it used to be a producer was the leader of the session, and depending on the personality and the skills, would either lead it as far as the musicians getting what he or she wants out of them in terms of, and then guiding the arrangement, guiding the playing, vocals, guiding vocals, get the best out of a particular vocalist. So it could be very hands-on. Usually it was. The famous producers are very hands-on in that respect. There are some that were kind of laid back on it, but in general, it was leading the session. Let's put it like that. today it's a lot of music creation. It's creating tracks. And I'm talking about electronic tracks. So what's happening is it's someone who's using virtual instruments, loops, samples in order to come up with a bed, and then the vocalist comes in, they'll add maybe one or two live musicians on top, and then the vocals. Now, there's two things that haven't changed. One is you still have to get the most out of a vocalist. And there are now very specific producers for that, where that once upon a time that was just the main project producer. Now you might call in a specific producer just to do the vocals. The one thing that hasn't changed, the big thing, has been the way the producer is the liaison between the artist and the record label, the money person, whatever it might be, the management even sometimes, where that, for better or for worse, it's a political game at that point. So that hasn't changed a whole lot. But, I think that the exciting part for a lot of producers is they're very much more hands-on in the creation, which once upon a time that wasn't so much so.
Bobby, we hear a lot of talk about, mixing and engineering. And for those with no prior knowledge, talk about the difference in the studio between a mixer and an engineer, typically.
Okay, it's the same as your fingers and a thumb. Your thumb can be a finger, but none of your fingers can actually be a thumb. Okay. And that's the same thing with a mixer. A mixer is an engineer, but not all engineers are mixers. Meaning that it's a special skill for balancing everything together, adding some special sauce, some special fairy dust that they and we do. And not all engineers can do that. And I can speak from experience because I was a good recording engineer, but not a good mixer. And it was a long journey to actually get to the point where I can say, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. It's a specialized skill. And eventually what happens is with many mixers, they find it's a lot more lucrative to just become a mixer. And, there are many of our more celebrated engineers that are mixers today, and that's all they do.
I have a friend who's an architect, and I have a friend who's a builder, and they both say that architects think they're good builders, and builders think they're good architects. And in the world of studio sessions, does it kind of bother you if you're the engineer and you know that they're going to take it to somebody else to get a mix out of it? And vice versa, is there sort of, ruffled feathers?
Yes. Maybe less so now because it's a lot more common. Mm-hmm. But if you go back 20 years, that was a major crawl in the bonnet of a lot of people where they would, a lot of engineers, they'd say, damn, I wanted to mix that. My mixes are better than what they got. There's a lot of that. But now it's so common that it's, less so. We kind of expect that might happen.
It reminds me of baseball, the specialization. You used to have just a pitcher and a reliever, and then you have middle relievers and all that stuff. So in the same manner, we have all these specialties. If you've been in the studio for a long enough time, you know what a DAW is, a digital audio workstation, and that's Pro Tools, that's Logic, that is what everybody is using now in the studios. We're now talking about GAWs, generative audio workstations, and you can't mention that without mentioning Suno. And Suno feels like a tool for serious songwriters to create sort of professional demos at a low cost. Is it that now? Is it pretty easy? Is it still a little bumpy using it? What about Suno?
It does an amazing job for what it is. And it's funny, I just had this conversation with Ed C. On my podcast a few episodes ago. Ed is a legendary Nashville engineer who's been around for a long time. And he was saying that what he's seeing is that there are some of his clients who are older songwriters are now getting their songs back. and they listen to them and they go, that was done in the 70s. It doesn't sound so good. I wish I had a modern version. So they go to Suno and they ask for that, and they get something that's very updated and very new. So that's a good example of, a very useful part of that. The other part is there are songwriters, for instance, that want to do a quick demo. And you can really do a quick demo, using Suno, and it's a lot cheaper. So part of this is lamenting the fact that now you can do it without using, the studio crew, and they're out of business. So, and that's kind of sad. But on the other hand, things move on. Now, the frustrating part, for me anyway, and I'm sure it's like that for everybody else, is the fact that if you get something that's pretty good and then you want to change something just a little bit, it doesn't quite work that way. Sometimes it will come back with something completely different, or different enough that you go, wait, no, I just wanted this little change here, and you gave me 10 big changes. So that's frustrating, and I think that's frustrating with any of the AI agents, the AI generators that we use. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned demos, and I know a lot of songwriters in Nashville that are using it for that purpose, not to write a song, but they'll upload their piano track or their guitar track, and then they'll experiment with different horn sections or string sections. And to your point, it's really upended that demo ecosystem, because if you're good at it, you can spend some time in there and make some really high quality demos. But that music, those tones, those instruments, they're still drawn off someone else's work, right?
Yeah, that's the sad part. And the whole thing about demos, this has hit Nashville more than anywhere else, I think, because Nashville has so many good musicians that the ecosystem, the demo ecosystem there, was really fantastic. I mean, you can get tracks for very inexpensively and very quickly. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
And that is also something that you lose, because when you're with some really good musicians, they can take your ideas in a different direction or another direction, or enhance them in such a way that you're not going to get using an AI generator. Not in the same way. So, again, 6 of one, half dozen the other. Yeah, it's changed. It's different today, and we roll with the changes.
Yeah, well, let me follow up with that just really quickly. I had a friend of mine tell me that one of the reasons for that, Bobby, is that in Nashville, when you're creating a demo, typically you're working, like you just said, with very high quality musicians and singers, but you're also creating a demo for a purpose that you want that cut. And so if you're writing for Morgan Wallen or whoever, you want to make that demo sound like a finished record that he would put out. Now, contrast that with what he said about LA songwriters, and you live in Los Angeles. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. He said it's not the same in LA. In LA, it could be you and me in front of a piano or just with a couple of guitars. We put that song down, and then we're comfortable enough just sending that demo to people. Is it that simple?
I don't think it's like that so much anymore. Everyone expects something that sounds relatively finished. I mean, publishers expect it. Artists expect it. Anybody who's going to use a song, they want to hear what it's going to sound like in the end. And the days of, I can hear through the piano demo, the piano vocal demo, I know what it's going to sound like in the end. That's not the case so much anymore. So I most of the songwriters I know on the coast have, gone to making as, good as a demo as they can. And as now here's the great part about that. They become excellent producers as a result, because they're actually building up a song every time. They know exactly what they want, and they're doing whatever they have to get it. So they're becoming really good producers. That's the excellent byproduct of that. You don't quite get that experience so much with Suno.
Interesting. Can you tell, Bobby, when a track has been created entirely with generative AI? Are there sort of tells that kind of tweak your ear and kind of go, something's not quite right there?
I'm ashamed to say, but increasingly, no, I can't tell. Wow. Except in the case of if you listen to a number of tracks back to back, and they all begin to sound somewhat the same. That's a really good key that maybe, you're listening to AI-generated tracks, because there's a certain sameness to everything. But just a one-off, you listen to it, you go, oh, I can't really tell. I mean, there's some really good stuff that's coming out of Suno. It's just amazing. But one thing I do notice is the vocals all sound similar, especially female vocals. They all sound very similar to me. And that's, I don't want to say it's a giveaway, but it's something that I would zero in on to see what would happen.
Now, with all this experience that you have in the studio, and just with the sheer volume of music that's being released today, Luminate said it's 106,000 tracks on average every day. But if you lump in, SoundCloud and YouTube, that number could triple. There's so much music. The barrier to entry is non-existent. So the question is, when you're in the studio, are there production or arrangement tips, that you have? Are there any little tricks or things that you feel like people who work in studios can use to sort of cut through that and grab people's attention other than maybe just loudness?
Yes. Well, first of all, good songwriting technique will never go away. And when you hear a good song, there's usually a lot of jumps in the melody. Disjunct intervals is the technical term, but think about yesterday, and it goes high and then it comes back. The Star Spangled Banner, where it's really difficult to sing because it's all over.
Yeah.
And we like that. I mean, subconsciously, we as a species like when those things happen. And you find less of that today. It's not just from AI, it's from using loops and samples where there's a certain sameness about everything. So the melodies become somewhat the same. With fewer changes, you have fewer chances to do that. So that's the first thing. But another trend I see happening is less slick production, where you intentionally try to keep things a little on the raw side and even leave mistakes in, because that's the one way to prove you're a human.
Sure.
If there's mistakes.
Yeah.
I think a band like Geese, I can't say I'm a big fan, but I'm a big fan of the fact that they're so outside the box that you go, AI can't possibly be involved in that.
Right.
And that, to me, is the best example of maybe the pushback against it.
We've got all of these affordable plugins. We've got now AI-assisted tools. Where is the old school, let's say, or the traditional tactics like mic placement and phase relationships, all of that stuff? Are those still important? And have you personally changed some of your workflow recently to accommodate these newer tools that maybe now are as important as those older tools?
Well, let's separate recording from mixing, because they're two different animals. Recording, if you want things to sound good, you have to make it sound good at the source when you first record it. So the good fundamental techniques have not gone away, and they will not go away. That's one of the things that an artist who gets lucky on their first try, whatever it might be, if it's AI generated or not, it doesn't matter. Eventually, they begin to go, gee, I wish it sounded like that song. And they usually pick something that's rather classic that was done the old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why can't I get that sound? Well, yeah, you can't get it because you're not recording the way that was done before with those techniques, with those ears. It's way different. So that's the one thing that's not going to go away. It's not going to change. On the other hand, what happens is if you are doing, in television, they call it run and gun. So it's real fast production. And if you're doing that, you're on the road, you're doing really fast production, there are some great tools that will clean things up, like, for instance, any noises in the background, or in some cases even change the frequency response to what it should be rather than it is, on a recording. So there are tools that can renew some of the tracks that, are not so good to start with, that we can actually make sound better. So, and then in the mixing side, there are a lot of tools that we can use that, do help things. There hasn't been as much of an evolution over the last few years. Like, for instance, mixing. There's many AI mixing tools that have been tried, and none of them have worked. And the reason why is that you might get the balance right, but the rest, and you even might get some EQ things right. But take notice, none of them ever apply effects. And effects are a big part of things. And also, they don't apply the approach that a mixer would have, the arrangement approach, where sometimes a mixer will sit there and they'll go, well, it would sound better if this is muted here. Or, gee, I wish that was over here instead, and move it. And it makes all the difference in the world. And that you're not going to get from an AI, or at least not yet. So that's where a lot of those things have failed. It's funny that there's a mix analyzer. I'm not going to name the name, but you put your mix in, and then it tells you where your problems are. So I put a mix in that I just had mastered. I know it sounds pretty good. Put it in, and it gives me a long list of things that are wrong with it. I think, okay, well, let's see what happens. So I pull a whole bunch of songs that are legendary songs that we've all listened to, we know sound great, and I put it in, Steely Dan and Eagles and things like that. And every time it comes out with a list of things that are wrong with it. I'm thinking, well, wait a second, they weren't wrong for 10 million people or 50 million people or however many heard it. So you have those things, false positives, let's say, that are coming up.
I like what you say about starting with a great song. There's a quote that I use often from Jonathan Daniel, where he said, if you give me a great song, my job is easy. If you give me a good song, my job is impossible. And you've written about, deconstructing hit songs. In your experience, what do you think makes a hit song, or maybe not even a hit song, a great song? What makes a great song? And are there common threads?
Well, let's say the difference between a great song and a great record, there's two different things there. A great record is catching lightning in a bottle. It doesn't happen all the time. You don't even know when you do it sometimes. It just happens. Sometimes you do. But, that's, can I say, a once-in-a-lifetime thing for some people? It is. Some people never experience that. A good song, though, again, it's interesting. It goes places where you might not expect. On the other hand, there are many hit songs that we love that don't do that, that are rhythmically interesting. Or there's just a groove that's undeniable. So, it's a moving target. And that's the other thing. For each generation, we have a different idea of what a great song is.
Well, yeah, and the performance too, right? Like we grew up with these vocalists that if they were to go on, let's say, American Idol, if, Bob Dylan or Tom Petty or, whoever, they don't have what may be considered to be a great voice, or Neil Young, but yet there's an originality aspect to it that when you put all those ingredients into that cake, it makes it undeniable.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't think that's ever going away. A great artist is a great artist.
Yeah.
It's a moving target, though.
Yeah.
But sort of in that kind of thought, if you could give some aspiring producers, engineers, or musicians sort of maybe 3 to 5 habits to adopt this year that would compound into sort of long-term success, which is a challenging question, what would they be and why?
Well, it's the same thing. I always ask a somewhat similar question. The greatest advice that someone got, and I asked that in my podcast. And one of the things that keeps on coming up is persistence. Mm-hmm. And I've noted that, and I'm sure you guys have too, during your careers. The people that have hung in there are the ones that have at least are making a good living at it, and the ones that have given up, obviously, they're not around. So the persistence is a big thing, and keep on going until you can't anymore, and even then, circle back, because you can't accomplish anything unless you do it. As far as in production is all about the artist, and it's all about nurturing the artist. One of the worst things that could happen with the producer is to make it his or her record rather than the artist's record. So that means making the artist feel comfortable and safe in a way that they feel good about presenting ideas. It also means being gentle in turning down some of those ideas. I work with somebody, for an example, we'd finish a song and he'd go, this has to be calypso. And we'd go and we cut it again and be in calypso. And he'd go, no, it's a reggae song. We cut it. And we cut it 5 different times and always go back to the first one. So I learned after a while, it's like, well, wait a second, let's sit on this. Are you sure? And it's just another evolution in how you deal with an artist, because the ego is so volatile that you have to be good at it. And it doesn't matter how you're doing it. If you're presenting somebody tracks and they make a suggestion, you have to be able to take it. So I think that those are the things. Being open to whatever the artist comes up with and helping that artist evolve, and being artist-centric, artist first, I think is a big thing. Yeah.
You've been doing this a while, and you've got so many great books out, and it's not just about production and engineering and, studio and all of that. You've written about, digital strategy and growing an audience. And I wanted to ask you about how things have sort of evolved into this new short form video world that we're in right now. And do you have any strategies for building a sustainable, engaged fan base without sort of burning out, in this short form video world we're in?
It's a real problem, isn't it? And I know a lot of artists are complaining about that. I'm sure you guys have heard this word. Many have given up, saying it's just not worth the effort. They don't mind creating the music and going through the music part. It's everything else. It's the marketing part that's difficult, demanding. But I have a feeling it's changed or changing, because yes, short form videos are really important to an artist. AI is making that easier. You do one long form video and it can make, a dozen short form videos for you. So that's easier. I'll give you an example of something that happens to me. I have a marketing company that I work with, and for ads, they keep on saying, we need you to do a walk and talk. Walk and talk is basically you go out and you walk and you talk into your phone for about a minute. I hate doing those things. And mostly because I live in the city, and I'm going and I'm talking and there's a truck going by me and there's a helicopter, and it's like, oh man, this is a lot harder than it should be. But they turn out to be the most effective ads, surprisingly enough. So it just goes to show you that sometimes things that you don't want to do, like to do, don't think will work, may in fact work in this environment. And you just have to keep your ear to the ground and do what you feel is comfortable. I think where people make a mistake is going against their comfort level. And, if they feel inherently wrong about something, maybe you should follow your intuition on it.
Yeah.
Hey, Bobby, if not that you will ever have a fire or any sort of catastrophe in your studio, but if you did, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 sort of indispensable tools there, and why? And I will preface the question by saying, the first time Jay and I got on with you to do a Q&A, you sounded so fantastic because of the tools you were using on the other end. I mean, it sounded awesome. So what are those secret, at the risk of asking you for secrets, what are the sort of secret things maybe, or the day-to-day things you can't do it without?
I'd rescue my cats, my laptop, and my backup drives in that order.
There you go.
Everything else is replaceable. You mentioned about the sound. The sound, it sounds good because it's an expensive signal chain that not many people are willing to do. Now, because I'm an audio person, people expect the audio to sound good. That's
right.
One thing. And because I'm a gear geek, I buy above my needs. So the big thing for me, it's a Rupert Neve Shelford channel. This is going into, and obviously the SM7. I had the SM7 that I was using before it was popular for podcasters. So I can say I was on the edge on that. And then I go into an Apollo Twin, which is not a huge upscale thing, but it works pretty good. But it's the Shelford channel that makes it sound good.
Yeah. And we looked at each other like, what the heck? Like, we've done a ton of these. I've done over 1,000 podcasts. I'm sure you have too. And sometimes it's somebody in the back of a tour bus, with an iPhone. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. And then, so when you get yours, it was quite refreshing. So as we sort of wind down here, a couple of things. One is, there's so much work that's done remotely. Do you do much remote work, and how difficult, if you do, how difficult is it for you to collaborate with others remotely?
Well, it's easier than ever to do remote collaboration. There are so many tools available, and now they're all pretty good. And they can be very sophisticated if you need it to be. So that's a whole lot less of a problem than it used to be. I think the biggest problem for anybody that's doing anything that has to do with audio and a computer is the audio inside the computer. You can have everything else working great. It's what's inside that's the hard part, because it'll be working fine, and then all of a sudden there'll be an update somewhere, and all of a sudden it's broken, and it'll make you crazy trying to make it work. So, I mean, this is even as something as simple as this podcast, where, oh yeah, it's working great, and tomorrow suddenly, it might not, and you go scratching your head and searching. Well, I know it's not out here, so it must be in there, and that's the consternation that we all have about this stuff, where we're really good in the outside the computer. It's the inside that's the hard part. But to answer your question, it's a lot easier to collaborate than it used to be, and it's kind of expected, where once upon a time you really wanted to be in a room with somebody, and now it's okay if you're not. So I think the biggest thing there was psychological.
Yeah.
I know that if I have my druthers, I'd rather be in a room with somebody. But maybe that's old school thinking.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, right.
I resemble that remark. Well, it's been so awesome to have you on again, Bobby, and chat about stuff like this. And we certainly hold you in the highest regard, because you are a writer, you are a podcaster, you are a working engineer and producer. So it never gets old, my friend. It never gets old.
Hey, Bobby, where can people learn more about, just all the stuff that you do, whether it's the blog and the podcast and your work and your books and, you do pretty much everything. Where can people learn more about you, Bobby?
The easiest thing is my website, BobbyOwsinski.com. And that will have links to every place else. When I was first starting this, I made a mistake in that I have multiple URLs So there's BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com, and each one of my blogs have a different URL, and my podcast is a different URL, which if I had to do all over again, I wouldn't do it that way. But that being said, there are links to all of them from my BobbyOwsinski.com.
Yeah, you're very
base.
findable.
Yeah, so it's not so bad.
All right, Bobby, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Let's talk again soon.
Jay, Mike, thank you. Mike, Jay, thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.